So within Amazon's ecosystem, there's a lot of different techniques we can talk about, from negation strategies, segmentation strategies. We could also add some complaints about how exact match is no longer exact match. On the outside perspective, we could talk about how if Amazon PPC costs hit a certain threshold, it starts to make sense to drive traffic from external sources. For some people who are listening to this, I just want to know my hard, cold 5-minute facts to go into Amazon Seller Central and make a change. For others listening to this, they're looking for something new and they're like, I need to explore. I've already tapped everything inside of Amazon. What else can I do? Those are the sort of people that are going to want to look at an external source.
Today, we've got one of the most versatile and insightful people on the tactical side of Amazon management, Stephen Pope, who is the founder of My Amazon Guy, manages $1.2 billion in annual revenue on Amazon with over 400 brands. So no wonder he knows a thing or two about Amazon. Welcome back to the show, Steve. Good to see you there.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Michael.
My pleasure. Right. What's your view here? I mean, I would say always historically, if people are shopping on the Amazon ecosystem, for starters, it's a shopping platform, not a browsing platform, let alone just an entertainment platform, then they are more likely to buy. And so you might as well maximize that first. Do you think that logic still holds?
A variable question, which is true for every PPC question ever. I like to give as much of a general answer as I can that's applying to as many people as possible. So for 80% of the sellers out there, after you have spent $50,000 a month, you're ready to look at alternative options. So for example, I sell some artisan soaps on Amazon. A soap like this does well on TikTok. I've hired many influencers to go around and shoot videos. I had a Tumblr business before Amazon yanked it. God bless Amazon and Jeff Bezos for just, shooting first and asking questions later. I was able to get a Starbucks barista to shoot in her full garb one of my tumblers and fully dressed up. That's a pretty cool thing that occurred for me by just ordering a lot of generic UGC, and it just happened to happen. So there's just a lot of opportunities depending on your diminishing returns threshold, as well as the category you're in. If you are hitting a point where if you spend an extra $1,000 on Amazon and it basically means nothing for your brand, at that point, it's time to get off the Amazon platform for additional opportunities. But you could be a small brand selling $5,000 a month on Amazon and think TikTok could also help, your virality and help get you to $1 million brand much quicker. So there's a lot of different frameworks we could apply here depending on where the brand is coming from. For the majority of brands, every brand I ever talked to has this singular problem, and it is there's too much to do. What should I focus on today? There's 1,000 things I could go in and check on. I could lower my ACoS, I could create new campaigns, I could touch my SEO, I could fix my main image to improve click-through rate. I don't have a brand story yet on all of my ASINs. I could go do some design work or upgrade A+ content to premium. And of course, every seller should do every single one of those activities, but nobody does, right? Like, it's just one of those things. It's like your own house. You need to do laundry and vacuum and take out the garbage, but in reality, not all three of those things are happening today. So as an Amazon seller, I think it's okay to pick your battles and choose and focus and create prioritization. If everything's a priority, nothing is. So with that in mind, you have to pick 2 or 3 things to hyper focus on. And in my opinion, traffic generation should always be on those focal points. If you have a marketing partner, perhaps they take that off your plate. My Amazon Guy is a marketing partner. So we love pairing up with operational brands who go out and are really good at sourcing and are good at logistics, but don't know how to generate traffic. But for sophisticated sellers who know how to generate traffic, then it becomes a question of, okay, I know I need to generate traffic, but what's the best way to do it? So sponsored product ads, bar none, are going to be the bulk, 80% of what everybody's doing all the time. But here's the thing where we start to delineate a bit. I think a lot of sellers have over-indexed on exact match spend, and many of them are putting 60, 70% of their budget in exact match keywords. I believe 80% of your budget should be in auto and broad match. Full stop. I don't think you've ever heard somebody say that before. I am just utterly confused why more people are not spending more money on broad and auto. And I have some theories behind it. I think it's because people assume that it's a higher ACoS. It's not, it's lower. Well, why is that? Well, what happened is exact match got bid up so high by everybody trying to get exact match keywords that they've made it get diminishing returns. And broad and auto are under indexed, they're underbidded on, and they're mismanaged. A lot of people are lazy with keyword negations. So I have a couple of rules. Rule number 1, never negate a good keyword. If If you go back in time 7, 10 years ago and looked at Amazon advertising literature from the supposed gurus, you'll hear things like make an auto campaign and then promote the keywords to exact match and then negate them from your auto. Do not do that. That is a terrible methodology because if the keyword is working in an auto campaign, you should leave it alone in the auto campaign. Duplicate it to the exact match for sure, 100%. But don't mess up what's currently working on an auto and broad match campaign. So that's rule 1. Rule 2, add weekly negations for anything that meets your parameters. Your parameters could be something like 20 clicks, no sales, add a negation. Your parameters could be something like 20% ACOS above my ACOS goal. So if your ACOS goal is 35% and it's at 55, you might negate it. Before I negate it, I would lower the bid 5, 10% every 3 days, see if it would help. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And then you end up negating it anyway. I think those are the sort of parameters that can really be helpful for somebody trying to upgrade what they're doing with their advertising strategy. And we could talk about segmentation. We could talk about bidding by hour and day parting and a lot of other more sophisticated things. But those basics about how you negate, when you negate, and how you should and shouldn't negate, I think are fundamentals that are often ignored.
I think one of the reasons that people do something that it isn't working is because in theory it makes so much sense and they've been so steeped in the idea of something, they absorb this idea with their mother's milk of when they're doing digital marketing, because on Google it tends to be more like that, at least it used to be. I'm not really up to date with that. And so they've got this fixated idea of how the world should work.
Sometimes it works like Mad Max, and we're drinking mother's milk from Mad Max crazy guys, and then we're all of a sudden we're war boys and out and fighting.
If it's working, do more of it, because you don't necessarily know how to reverse engineer an algorithm that creative geniuses in programming for 20 years of regressive AI have created. I don't know how to create that. And so I think, well, if it's working, broad match should be getting more of my money, and if exact match isn't working, we shouldn't be spending so much on it. And you get the data, as you say, you can have your numbers, 20 clicks, 10 clicks, whatever. Let's get a bit more sophisticated then, because I know a lot of people want to know about this stuff. Segmentation, does that really make a difference? And is there the theory and practice difference, or is that more of a unity?
When we talk about segmentation, I think people immediately in their mind think like naming conventions or stuff like that, but in reality, segmentation is more about keyword prioritization. 3 to 5 of those keywords get 90% of the spend. So if that consistently happens, then why are people still making campaigns with lots of keywords in it? Well, it's because they don't know how to segment. Some of the basic segmentation rules include don't mix your match types with broad and exact and stuff like that. I don't really care about that particular one. I mean, maybe sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't. It's cleaner for sure, but at the end of the day, I've seen it violated just fine. But what I do think is a hard and fast rule is if you add more than 5 keywords to a campaign, only 5 of those keywords are going to get 80 to 90% of the spend. That seems to legitimately scale. No matter how many keywords you add, it's still, that basic stance still happens. That creates what's called cannibalization. Keyword cannibalization means that if you have more than 5 good keywords, only 5 of those keywords are going to get good impressions. So this is a limitation of sales that you can cause or self-inflict if you don't have more campaigns created to segment out each of these subsets of keywords. So for example, I could have this tumbler right here, and I could have stainless steel tumbler as one keyword. I could have tumbler as another keyword. I could have gifts for men as a third keyword. First of all, I'd probably separate the gift keywords around from the generic keywords, but let's pile them in for the sake of this particular exercise. But right around keyword 5, I would just limit it, and I would hard cold stop it. Now, a lot of PPC softwares will do something even more granular, where they'll do 1 keyword per campaign. Some of the most prolific PPC automation softwares make upwards of 10,000 campaigns. That's insanity because you can't manually grasp what the hell is going on in the account at that sort of level, but it technically works through automation. I recently took over one of these accounts 2 weeks ago, and within the first week, we grew the sales directly from ads by $130,000 a week. Now that number, if you times that on a monthly and an annual basis, is in the millions of dollars. So in 1 week, we made an account $3-4 million more dollars in annual revenue. And by the way, the ACOS stayed the same. So a lot of times people are like, oh, everybody needs PPC automation. I don't believe that. I think there's a time and place for it. There's some nice things to say about PPC automation. lowering down ACOS. But I do think from a methodology standpoint, a pilot is critical to strategically make decisions. I don't think you can go to AI today, whether it's on PPC automation, whether it's on SEO, whether it's on strategy and business information. You have to have a human pilot. The human pilot, which has its own deficiencies, can overcome many of these deficiencies through strategic guidance and piloting from an overarching strategy point.
That's an absolutely amazing example and endorsement, obviously, of what you do over at My Amazon Guide. And one of the things that strikes me is really simple. If you are deep in the weeds on Amazon, like you are incredibly deep, I'm somewhat in them, these things are still tricky. If I want to be able to sell my business to somebody, for example, I was working with somebody who's built and sold a business for $500,000, not huge, but takes some doing in the Google affiliate driven space. So he was good at SEO. Now he's the sharp guy and he knows SEO, but that doesn't translate to Amazon. Now, how do I put together an SOP or a training system for somebody to be able to take that system over where you've got 10,000 campaigns to run? So I think excessive complication comes with a lot more side or second and third order effects that we don't think about that are very bad. What's your experience of other things like that?
So I totally agree with that. I think that the more sophisticated an account is, the less value it creates, because the McDonald's franchise model, keep it simple, stupid, KISS style, was scalable because of how easy it was. And you could argue that McDonald's was more of a real estate play than it was a franchise place to sell burgers and fries. But suffice it to say, simplicity is the best scale. If you look at my agency, it's a case study of this. I generate 20 million ARR. So that means I have a take-in of $20 million. I work on 400 brands. And the model that I built was on simplicity, SOPs that are simple. And I sell my SOPs, by the way, and I give them out to my competitors and I sell them to other brands. Often the case, I'll get an email from some sophisticated seller and be like, this is it? This is all there is? And I'll be like, yes, trust the system. And there will be some argument back and forth about this. But because some of them believe me enough, they're like, well, okay. And then I'll get a note 2 or 3 months later about how it allowed them to hire 3 more people and how they don't have to run it anymore and how things went well. But the simplicity of how you structure an account, I cannot emphasize enough. Here's another case example. So imagine there's 10,000 campaigns on an account. How many people can run that account? Well, you can stay on your current provider. That's option 1. Option 2, you could shut them all off and start over, which is a terrible option because all of the history on those accounts. Or option 3, you have to find another third party who knows how to overtake those challenges and fix them. And that short list is very short. We happen to be one of them. The first time that I did it, I was terrified. I was very scared. And you have to use bulk sheets and you have to be able to use macros to be able to overcome that sheer volume of data. And the Excel sheet starts freezing. Like it gets complicated. So very pro simplicity.
This is why I was hesitating before I even went into the more sophisticated stuff, because I think it's like the Sorcerer's Apprentice, which is a famous sort of, I know from my days as a musician, basically it's a Disney film as well, right? I mean, the guy thinks, can't be bothered to sweep up, so he magics the broom and then it gets out of control and lots of stuff happens automatically. But the trouble is, it's out of control, he doesn't understand it. And I think the ability to create a monster these days with AI gets ever easier every week, and that's not what we want. So I'm with you on that. And also, you're asking an AI system to interact with another AI system. The order of magnitude of complexity is just crazy. Let me ask the opposite question. You were saying what sophisticated things. You've given us some simple things. How can we simplify the mess that we've all created to some degree in our PPC accounts on Amazon? What are your number 1 tips for that?
You start with a framework, right? Like you have an overarching goal. Now, a lot of people have a hard time getting past surface level. I want to lower my ACOS. The next layer underneath I want to lower my ACOS comes from the segmentation approach. So for example, let's say I've got an account with 30,000 a month in spend and it's got a lot of campaigns, but the campaigns have hundreds of keywords in them. So what I would do is I would create a framework and say, hey, over the next 2 weeks, I'm going to pause any campaigns keywords that have more than 5 keywords in it, or leave those campaigns alone, but create new campaigns for any keyword that's not getting enough impressions where it currently is. So some people would say, hey, you can't have the same keyword on multiple campaigns. I think that's malarkey. I think you can have as many campaigns having the same keyword ever, no problem. You just have to choose your framework that you desire. You could talk about segmenting by keyword type, right? You could have GIFs categorized in the GIF campaigns. You could have the material type as a campaign type. You could have the scent as a material type. There's all kinds of ways you could choose to segment. But I think if you're going for broad strokes first, make sure you eliminate keyword cannibalization so that you have maximum impression gain. By doing that, you'll grow the account. Other framework things I would put in place is just to make sure that once a week, whether it's on a Friday or whenever, you go in and you add negations based on a rule set. You can create rule sets with push button macros that will go through a spreadsheet where you download it from Amazon, you push a button, and it tells you negate these 17 keywords. So you could adopt some sort of methodology, framework, technique, and then systematize that to go on a cadence that you do every week. And so creating new campaigns to eliminate cannibalization, making sure that you negate those bad keywords to lower the ACoS, that's the sort of goal setting that you have to get to before you start doing things like day parting, right? And so day parting cannot be done at the macro level. Day parting can be done through AI or a PPC software, but if you try and do it manual inside of Seller Central, that's a lot of button clicks. I've done it personally. What I would do if I was setting up day parting for the first time, I would lower all of my bids across the account by somewhere between 5 and 10%. Step one. And the reason you have to do that is because you can't lower bids with day parting. It's really stupid. You can only up them. So you have to lower everything by 5 or 10% to begin with. Then I would look at my data for when most sales come into the account. For most brands or accounts, that's usually Sundays, Mondays, followed by Tuesday through Friday, and then Saturday as a dead last. If that's what happens on your account, then you could decide, okay, between Sunday at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., I'm going to increase my bids 25%. On Monday morning at 6 to 10 a.m., I'm going to increase it 35%. And then it's from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., I'm going to increase it 15%. And from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Monday nights, I increase it 25%. And then you could just leave Fridays and Saturdays alone. Now they're bid down 5 or 10, but then you have the optimal days, Sunday and Monday, with higher bids. And then you can create rule sets to go through Tuesday through Thursday accordingly. And by doing that, you may improve your overall results, but it's down to a campaign level. So it's hard to gauge, and you can't download a single report to do that. This is a high level of sophistication where software may be beneficial and whatnot. That's kind of my quick hit on how I'd go a little bit deeper on building that framework out. Each account's going to have a different level of desire or where somebody is at and level of sophistication. The more sophisticated you get it, the harder it is to delegate it, the harder it is to manage.
You've created an agency, so you got to hire a lot of people. That the main job for an agency is, I guess, recruitment, right? I mean, marketing.
Yeah, we're a glorified HR company.
Yeah. That's the thing that Hormozy was talking the other day. Alex Hormozy was saying, you've got to look at each model or business model that you're in and understand where the hard thing is. And actually, it's not often not what you think it is. It doesn't matter really whether you're going to outsource to an agency or create your own in-house systems or sell it to somebody else. There is a scaling problem, which you've mentioned. I want to bring that back as well, because I just think, once again, I hear a lot of people nerding about this in masterminds and what have you. And I think just because you can save 5% on, that might be a significant number, like a couple of percent, which is worth some real money, doesn't mean you should do it because you made your business unsellable or you've made yourself unfireable from your role, which you're now working 80-hour weeks. And congratulations, you're making an extra $10,000 a year. But was that a good trade-off, right? So again, the simplicity thing I think is so important. But I do like your approach to the day parting. It makes a lot of sense, and you have to have your own fingerprint for your business. Everyone has slightly different priorities, and what you're saying, I think, is that your management, your PPC, has to reflect those priorities. So you can't just hand it off to a generic automated system and hope it works. Is that about right?
Correct. And the black boxes have lots of problems. Here's another example, right? So Labor Day, a US holiday, impressions drop off a cliff. Everybody's swimming and doing barbecue. And what happens is the AI is like freaking out. It's like, oh my gosh, there's not enough impressions. We've got to raise bids. And then your ACoS spikes 20, 30 points for the holiday. And so that's why at my Amazon guy, we don't use software, because we don't want to get fired on Tuesday when everybody comes back from the holiday break. Because I have been fired before when I use the black box AI software to run the ads. Another example that I'll give you on levels of sophistication that I think people who are listening to you, they're trying to prep for a sale, will appreciate. Your SKU count matters tremendously. If you have a business with less than 5 SKUs doing $1 million, you're a much easier business to sell versus an account with 100 SKUs doing $1 million with a lot more diversification of where those sales come from. So having simpler products, simpler catalogs also is super beneficial. And I'll give you one additional example. If you are trying to decide how to grow your sales today on Amazon, one of the fastest ways to grow your sales is by adding more product, adding more SKUs. But there's a right way to do that, and there's a wrong way to do that. The wrong way to do that is by adding 17 new color variations. And if you want a personal example, I was selling artisan soaps. I was having a good time. I had some good sellers. And I thought, I'll do something funny and creative. And I made a new soapbox for teenagers with scents such as pimple popper, monkey farts, dirty socks. Would you like to know how many pimple poppers I sold? Less than 50, right? And I ordered 1,000 of these boxes. And so I had to eat those soaps. In fact, I keep it on my desk to remind me not to overexpand my SKU catalog. And I also shower with my own product, not in shame, but because they're actually really damn good soaps. They smell really good. But the naming convention, the fact that I expanded to too many scents hurt my capital. Expand SKUs, but don't expand color variations, scent variations. Don't do that. Go launch a brand new product in a similar subcategory that still fits your brand. Don't try and rework the entire thing and add a scent variation because it's not going to actually increase your sales. And in fact, you may just waste money doing a scent that nobody cares about, and then you got dead stock.
Thank you for that warning. I like the pimple popper as an example. And a lot of people manage their business by profit and loss accounts, and it's good to be able to do that, and that's better than just relying on some kind of, your Amazon sales in your bank account. But that doesn't account for the capital allocation. And so if you can incrementally add a few more sales and get a bit of revenue, get a bit of profit, that looks good if all you look at is a profit and loss. But if you look at the capital requirement and requirements like if I'm going to buy a business, if I have to invest $500,000 extra in inventory to buy this business and make it work versus $100,000, it's no contest. And the business that sells through its stock efficiently and quickly is way more desirable. And I think it's kind of common sense to anyone who's ever run a business like this ever. And then we kind of forget common sense because we fixate on one number, right? So what are your experiences of that? You've obviously got experience of that as an owner. What about your clients? Do they fall into traps like that?
All the time. And we could even criticize the aggregators. I mean, nobody wants to hear about Amazon aggregators anymore, but here's a quip. The reason Thrasio went bankrupt was because it was too sophisticated. They were so sophisticated. They had all these spreadsheets about how to do X, Y, and Z, but they missed the full picture of what it means to be an Amazon seller. To be an Amazon seller, you have to have tenacity and grit in your bloodstream. And the second you lose aspect of that and you try and hire a suit or an Excel sheet wizard, you lose the game. And that's what happened to the aggregators. That's why they're all going bankrupt. Fun fact, Thrasio went out of stock on many of its best sellers. That's rule number 1 on Amazon. Never go out of stock. How does the most sophisticated, biggest company of all time selling on Amazon run out of stock on its best sellers? But I heard horror stories after horror stories about this. Amazon sellers who had earnouts just hitting their head against a brick wall, watching their entire business get destroyed. So that's a really good use case study on the simplicity is so superior. I think we've hit that probably too hard, but for somebody who's not convinced yet, more we could do to try and persuade you. But for those who want to keep it simple, wake up every day, log into your account, run your basic checks, and try and systematize as much as you can, create SOPs, hire a couple virtual assistants. When you get stuck, hire an expert who can help unstuck you, if you will. If you've plateaued in growth, it's time to hire. One of my favorite things, you mentioned Alex Ramosi, his girlfriend / wife said the other day that if you have a goal that you haven't been able to accomplish in 2 quarters, you have a people problem. It's a who, not how solution. Often the case, if you're a business that's stuck, you need a new person. And that person's not you.
Yeah, Leila Hormozi's actually, she's the one who runs the teams. I think Alex Hormozi spends a lot of time on social media and then, buying companies and doing all the other stuff. But yeah,
visionary and integrator, classic relationship.
Absolutely right. Yeah, and all the, if you think in the Amazon space, I think of Nate Hirsch and Connor Gillivan. They're a classic example. CEO, COO. They've created and exited multiple businesses like that. And yes, and I guess that if you're not an integrator, if you're not a hirer, you need to find somebody who is, or hire an agency. So that, I guess that brings us to the point where we ought to give you a chance to toot your horn, as it were. That's what we say in Britain anyway. That means something different in America.
I used to work for the Brits one time, and they opened up a warehouse in Baltimore and then started trying to sell catalogs with, rubbish bins and other challenging Britishese that does not translate to Americans. So been there and done that. Don't put on the front page of a catalog how you sell rubbish bins, because it'll just get right into the garbage can over in the States. But in terms of my Amazon guy, I won't toot my horn too much here, other than to say We can help any Amazon seller at any point in their journey. I have a la carte things for new sellers. I sell trademarks. I filed over 2,000 trademarks. We have full service. We help anything that grows traffic and improves conversion rates in the form of PPC, SEO, CTR. Not enough people do click-through rate stuff. And then on the conversion side, we got merchandising, catalog troubleshooting, and design work. So that's us in a nutshell. We manage over 400 brands, $1.2 billion in annual revenue that we manage as a company. We have plenty of people and staff ready to serve, 550 employees. We've done everything we can to make it simple so that you as a seller can focus on what you like doing, launching more products usually, and then we'll take care of the marketing so you can have peace of mind.